Millionaire in disguise ordered coffee. What the waitress revealed changed everything in 3 words. Jake gripped the steering wheel of his rusted pickup, the rain-soaked streets reflecting the heavy burden he carried. As a 32-year-old mechanic, he felt like a relic himself, worn down, grease-stained hands constantly scrambling to make ends meet. With each turn down streets lined with quaint houses, he stared at lives he envied, lives filled with promise and freedom, a stark contrast to his own world heavy with unfulfilled dreams. The thunder rumbled outside as if the sky itself mirrored his inner turmoil, fueling the haunting question: was this all there was? Stepping into the cozy diner, the scent of coffee was an intoxicating embrace, pulling him momentarily from the storm brewing in his mind. He slid onto a booth, the familiar discomfort of guilt settling in his stomach. Behind the counter, Claire beamed while pouring coffee, her smile radiant amid the ordinary chaos. She was a light in his monochrome life, but her laughter didn't alter the crushing reality of his responsibilities. Why was it so hard to imagine breaking free? Were dreams meant exclusively for others? As he took a sip of his bitter coffee, he felt the weight of unspoken words stretch between them. She often listened as he spoke of cars and mechanical woes, but would she care about the faded photographs in his mind? In moments of shared silence, he'd catch her glancing his way, working through the turbulence of her past that clung to her bright eyes. A connection sparked, precious yet heavy with the implications of their separate lives. That Tuesday, as he found solace in the diner, Claire noticed something unusual. Her heart raced when, at the end of the shift, she discovered an envelope left behind by Jake. Curiosity pushed her to open it. Inside lay a crumpled lottery ticket, numbers printed on a slip that could reshape Jake's destiny. She picked it up, her mind swirling with excitement and doubt. Did he even know he held a chance at freedom? "You deserve better," she thought, a mantra forming as she returned to the floor. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Jake entered the diner again, the rain pattering against the windows like the steady beat of his anxious heart. Claire approached him, the ticket in her hand felt both like a lifeline and an anchor. "Jake," she started tentatively, "you need to see this." He looked at her, confusion etching lines onto his forehead. The ticket trembled slightly in her grip, her eyes locking onto his as if they could unravel the inner workings of his scrambled thoughts. "You deserve better." The phrase hung between them, charged with possibility and pressure. Did he deserve it? The very thought of chasing a different life felt dangerous. Jake's mind raced, guilt flooding him. How could he pursue dreams while family obligations clawed at him like hungry wolves? As Claire's encouraging gaze met his, Jake's breath snagged in his throat. The storm outside dwindled, but the chaos roared inside of him, his future tipping into uncertainty. He was torn, not just by the dilemma of money and fortune, but by his identity entangled in loyalty and fear. Would he be brave enough to grasp the chance before him? Or would he let the tide of expectation drown him once more? A sorrowful weight pressed against his chest as he stood frozen, the world outside beckoning him, a vibrant place filled with possibilities and praise, but Jake lingered at the boundary of fear and hope, paralyzed by everything he had yet to confront. Jake sat in stunned silence, the crumpled lottery ticket a physical representation of everything he both desired and dreaded. Claire's words echoed in his mind, "You deserve better." Each syllable hit him like a drumbeat, trying to stir something long buried inside. The uncertainty gnawed at him, feasting on his wavering resolve. Who was he now, and who could he be? As the minutes dragged on, each second pulsed with the weight of potential. He could leave this life behind, his run-down garage, the bills stacked high at home, and the sense of inadequacy clawing at him like a stubborn wound. But at what cost? A cascade of images flooded his mind, his mother's warm smile when she walked into his garage to check on him, the quiet acceptance of his friends who didn't expect much from him. Break free. Or remain the dependable son and friend? Claire shifted anxiously, her eyes searching his face for understanding. Jake, listen. You can't stay stuck because you're afraid. If these numbers mean something, she trailed off, her voice a mix of hope and concern. It was then he realized that Claire was offering more than just encouragement. She was laying down the gauntlet. The rush of fear constricted his throat. But what will happen to my family? To my responsibilities? Making a choice felt like playing poker with his entire life on the table. But what sort of hand did he even hold? Your family loves you, but they wouldn't want you to sacrifice your happiness to support them, Claire replied softly, her unwavering eyes piercing through his doubts. You have a chance. It just takes courage. Her words struck harder than any wrench he'd ever turned. In the world of gears and oil, Jake understood one truth: every engine needed a spark to run. Was this that moment? He could snuff it out, turn away, or he could ignite something he hadn't dared to imagine, something that could fuel the life he yearned for but feared to embrace. In the silence that followed, Jake reached out and took the ticket from her palm, feeling its weight. He glanced around the diner, at the other patrons laughing, lost in their own worlds. A wave of longing washed over him, he wanted to be a part of that joy. But first, he needed to confront himself. What if the ticket is a mistake? What if I fail? Then you'll learn, Claire answered matter-of-factly. Failure is just a chapter, not the entire book. If you never try, you'll always regret it. Her unwavering belief in him ignited a flicker within. What if the depths of failure held hidden lessons? In that moment, he realized it wasn't just about the ticket, it was about breaking free from the weight of a life that felt predetermined. The chains of fear began to rattle loose, possibility threading itself through his cautious heart. He sat up straighter, a wave of determination rising within him. Maybe it's time I rewrite my story, Jake said, a conviction gathering strength behind his words. Claire smiled, her excitement contagious. She understood that beneath the layers of hesitation was a man on the brink of transformation. Let's check the numbers, and remember, no matter what happens, you're already braver than you think. As they moved toward the front to see the lottery results on the television mounted on the wall, an unexpected thrill coursed through Jake. It was no longer just about chance, but about the leap he was willing to take for a different future. In that electrifying moment, the sky outside brightened, as if reflecting some inner shift within him. Yet doubt still lingered, lurking beneath the optimism. What if the tides turned against him? But as Jake glanced at Claire, her energy urging him forward, he felt the winds of change. The next chapter was waiting, a blank canvas for him to fill. Would he embrace it, or would the past pull him back? Something was shifting, and he was ready to uncover the truth of his own dreams. As the television flickered to life, voices from the screen melded with the rush of thoughts swirling in Jake's mind. The numbers danced in front of his eyes, but each sequence felt surreal, like trying to catch smoke with bare hands. He held his breath, an impulse to shield himself from disappointment surfacing like an ancient reflex. Claire squeezed his arm, a steady anchor amid the storm of uncertainty. Just focus on the numbers, Jake. Forget the rest for now, she urged softly, sensing his apprehension. The announcer's voice drowned out his racing heartbeat, listing the winning combination. Jake's eyes darted back and forth between the ticket in his hand and the screen. One number matched. Then another. Hope flickered, delicate and tenuous. As the final number rolled out, anticipation peaked, then dropped, a balloon caught in a sudden gust. You've got to be kidding me, he muttered, half in despair and half in amazement. He didn't win, but something within him shifted. The dread he often felt didn't settle in, instead, it evolved into a discharge of energy. He turned to Claire, who was grinning at him, her encouragement unyielding. Let us not dwell on what didn't happen. What do you want to do now? Jake paused, the question piercing through the lingering fog of disappointment. What did he want? He wasn't sure he had ever asked himself that in earnest. The very idea transported him to a realm beyond his mundane life, where ambition met courage. Maybe it's time I stopped waiting for life to happen, he realized aloud. Claire's enthusiasm radiated, urging him further. This is just the beginning. Think about it. Every door is still open. He took a breath, processing Claire's words. The tally of his past, the missed opportunities, the fear that had suffocated his potential felt lighter somehow. What if I could finally take the first step toward becoming more than the mechanic everyone expects? The thought sat heavier than any chain, it vibrated with an exhilarating promise. The moment unfurled with clarity. What about an auto repair shop that focuses on eco-friendly solutions? The idea burst forth before he could hesitate. Modern cars, sustainable energy. Claire's eyes lit up. That's amazing. You'd be contributing, plus there's a growing market for that. Her excitement transcended the physical, propelling Jake beyond what was comfortable. And suddenly, everything began to fit. The hours spent tinkering with engines were not just a means to an end, they were sparks of a passion he long suppressed. He had always aligned with what he believed others wanted him to be. But revelation brewed. If he could harness that energy, seek out knowledge about sustainable practices, maybe he'd finally craft a path that was not only successful but uniquely his. I could enroll in courses, network, learn more, he affirmed, almost breathless with realization. His mind raced with plans and strategies. Each was a stepping stone toward a vision chiseled from newfound insights. In that moment, Jake grasped that failure could very well turn into invention. If I'm going to do this, I need to also find finance options. Maybe even investors who share that vision. The entrepreneurial thought practically crackled with potential. It was a challenge, a territory he had little experience with, but the mere prospect both exhilarated and frightened him. Was this a flash of brilliance or another trap of lofty dreams? Let's strategize. Claire's voice surged with enthusiasm, dragging him from uncertainty into actionable steps. They sat at a booth, scribbling notes, mapping out possibilities along with contingencies. But as night fell, a thought prickled at the back of Jake's mind. What if he faced heavy skepticism from friends and family? What if they dismissed his ambitions too? Doubt lingered, but quickly transformed, mingling with resolve. The essence of change doesn't thrive in a vacuum, it feeds on confrontation. Jake stood, determination folding over apprehension like fabric. Tomorrow, I'll draft a plan. But first, I must confront my own reluctance. A contemplative silence engulfed them, but within Jake, a quiet storm brewed. He was ready to challenge not just the world, but the deepest corners of his own mind, the very aspects he once thought insurmountable. This leap resembled a tightrope walk between fear of failure and the intoxicating thrill of possibility. Tomorrow would be the day he unveiled this hidden ambition. Yet deep down, he knew he'd be scrutinized. But what happens if they don't understand? He contemplated aloud, resisting backpedaling on the verge of his major transformation. Then you show them something they never believed possible. Claire's voice rang clear, igniting a fire within him. As he stepped into the unknown, the shadows of doubt clung tightly at his heels while the light of potential beckoned him forward. With every intention to stand tall against the pushback, Jake sensed he was on the cusp of something monumental. In the deep recesses of his thoughts, he pondered, could reinvention come at a cost? But he was about to find out. The next morning would open a world of questions that demanded answers, an unforeseen confrontation with reality. Would he rise, or would he let fear swallow the spark he'd ignited within? The morning sun poured through the blinds, illuminating Jake's cluttered kitchen, casting elongated shadows that almost mirrored the uncertainty lingering in his mind. Plans for his eco-friendly auto repair shop etched into every corner of the table felt dauntingly ambitious. Tempted to hit the snooze button on ambition, he instead brewed a pot of coffee, the bitter aroma fueling the clarity he desperately sought as he prepared to confront his choices head-on. Every sip seemed vital, a ritual of awakening not just to caffeine but to his newfound resolve. "Draft a plan," he muttered under his breath, the mantra bolstering his determination. He was aware that he couldn't skirt around confronting the question of financial backing, and that realization fired off a cascade of anxieties. What will my family think? What if investors laugh me out of the room? Jake settled in front of the laptop as if it were a formidable opponent. The vibrant desktop wallpaper, a collage of sleek, modern vehicles powered by renewable energy, served as a constant reminder of what he sought to build. He opened a blank document, ready to pour forth ideas in ink, but the cursor blinked at him mockingly, impatiently. His fingers hovered, betraying the urgency to articulate his vision against the backdrop of self-doubt. "Okay, let's start with the basics," he said aloud, almost hoping to convince himself through the act of speaking. "Business name," he typed, forcing himself to think creatively. "Green Gear Auto." It rolled off the tongue but felt lifeless, uninspired. A wave of frustration surged through him. Was this truly the best he could come up with? Minutes ticked by, filled with staccato keystrokes transitioning into silence as the cursor blinked on the empty page. He stood abruptly, pacing the room, feeling the walls close in. The tension within him had transformed into a physical weight. "I need fresh air," he declared, shoving the laptop aside and throwing on a jacket. Stepping outside, the brisk morning air felt like a cleansing force, dispelling the remnants of doubt still clinging to him. He walked toward the local coffee shop, seeking both caffeine and clarity, hopeful inspiration would strike in the familiar environment. As he entered, the warmth washed over him, but it didn't completely thaw the frost of apprehension. His eyes grazed the room when they landed on an older woman seated alone, reading a newspaper. Something drew him to her, a palpable air of wisdom etched into her features. He lined up behind her in the queue, anxiety surfacing anew with the thought of revealing his ambitions to others. "Coffee, please," she ordered, her voice steady despite the day's noise. As she turned to Jake, their eyes met, an unspoken connection igniting in that brief moment. "Good choice," he said, unsure why he spoke. But something about her presence made it feel right. As they waited for their drinks, she turned her full attention to him. "You look like you're carrying the weight of the world," she remarked, her gaze keen and thoughtful. Jake hesitated, then exhaled slowly. "I've got plans for a new business, but I'm not sure it will work out. I'm worried about what everyone will think." She studied him, then smiled knowingly. "Sometimes, what others think is the least of your worries. It's whether you believe in what you're doing that really matters. What's the purpose behind it?" Her words hit like a bell, resonating deep within him. Just a few silent seconds felt monumental, as if they stoked the flicker of ambition into a flame. "I want to change the auto industry," he replied, his voice steadier than he felt. "To create something sustainable." Her eyes sparkled. "Then that's your answer. Fear is just a shadow. Light it up with your passion. People will follow conviction." A shift occurred within him, her insight felt not just encouraging but validating. If he could visualize this dream clearly, perhaps he could approach others with an authenticity that would resonate with them. As they received their coffees, he felt a renewed sense of purpose. Jake couldn't shake the impression that this brief encounter was more than coincidence. Leaving the shop, he mentally mapped out his next few days, research funding options, explore networking avenues, and refine his vision until it gleamed. As he stepped onto the sidewalk, bolstered by her words, the echoes of skepticism that had clouded his vision began to dissipate. What others thought was merely noise against the clarity of his intent. But as the day unfolded, a new thought dared to surface. Would family, his parents especially, embrace this departure from the life they envisioned for him? Would he confront them, risking not only his newfound dream but the very relationships that had defined his worldview? With that daunting question hanging in the air, Jake advanced toward an inevitable decision, a crossroads presenting a paradox of support and fear. The real confrontation was yet to come. The drive home felt longer than usual, the quiet inside his car amplifying the whirlpool of thoughts tugging at the edges of Jake's mind. Each mile was a reminder of his parents' dreams for him, a conventional life wrapped in stability and predictability. It left him torn, battling between the life they envisioned for him and the one he yearned to create. Pulling into his driveway, he felt the familiar knot tighten in his stomach. He climbed out, hesitating at the front door. Would they understand? Would they dismiss his ambitions as whimsy? A sharp breath steadied him, he had to find out. Inside, the scent of home comforting yet suffocating wrapped around him. He could hear laughter and the clinking of dishes from the kitchen, where his parents prepared dinner. As he entered, the warmth of their presence washed over him, momentarily dulling his anxiety. "Jake!" his mother exclaimed, her smile brightening the room. "Join us for dinner. I made your favorite." "Thanks, Mom," he replied, forcing a smile while butterflies took flight in his stomach. As meals were served, Jake's mind raced. The table buzzed with conversation, his father talking about work, his mother chiming in with plans for a family gathering. Jake forced himself to play along, but the urge to unveil his aspirations nagged at him, bubbling beneath the surface with increasing intensity. "Are you still working at that old garage?" his father asked, a tone of mild curiosity lacing his words. Jake's heart raced. "Actually, I'm thinking about starting my own business." The words felt like a leap into an unknown abyss. His father paused, fork hovering mid-air, the jovial chatter around him falling silent. "What kind of business?" A lump lodged in Jake's throat as he met his father's gaze. "An eco-friendly auto repair shop." The admission tasted both liberating and terrifying. "I want to focus on sustainability." His mother's fork clinked onto her plate, surprise etched across her face. "Eco-friendly auto repair?" she echoed, processing the idea. "That's different. Are you sure this is a viable plan?" Despite the apprehension nearly suffocating him, the brief validation from the woman at the coffee shop echoed in his mind. "It is viable," he asserted, feeling conviction merge with determination. "There's a growing demand for sustainable options in the industry. I believe I can fill that gap." His father leaned back, scrutinizing him with the intensity of a hawk. "What do you know about running a business? And how do you plan to fund it?" The questions hovered, stinging more than he expected. He had anticipated this reaction, yet facing it head-on triggered something deeper, a mix of fear and a burgeoning sense of resilience. "I have a plan. I've been researching funding options and networking opportunities. I just need your support." Silence filled the room, thick and palpable. Jake quickly scanned his parents' faces, recognizing a storm of emotions swirling beneath the surface. "Jake, you worry us," his mother finally said. "This isn't an easy path." "I know," he replied, his voice steady despite the quaking inside. "But living in fear of failure cannot be the way to live. I can't settle for what's safe if it means sacrificing what I'm passionate about." The voices at the table quieted, giving space to his newly declared resolve. At that moment, Jake realized how critical this conversation was, not just for him, but for them all, pushing against the inertia shaped by years of expectation. Jake's father finally exhaled, his demeanor shifting from apprehension to something resembling acceptance. "If this is truly what you want," Jake leaned forward, feeling the pulse of his ambition quicken. "It is. I need your support to start, even if it means taking risks. If it fails, at least I'll know I tried." With those words hanging in the air, Jake recognized he was no longer standing at the periphery of his dreams. He aimed to carve a path toward realization, one full of uncertainty but tinged with hope. But as the conversation hung in the balance, a new thought emerged, puncturing his newfound confidence. What if, in pursuing his dream, he lost the very foundation of support he needed? The taste of dinner, once comforting, now felt bittersweet as he gazed at his parents' uncertain faces. Would they climb aboard his journey or cling to their fears? As he began to formulate a strategy to garner their support, Jake sensed a new challenge building on the horizon. The confrontation had shifted, revealing his parents' apprehensions as adversaries he would need to address head-on if he was serious about his visions. The real journey was only beginning, and with each passing second, he knew that the future would demand even more from him than he had anticipated. Awakening the next morning, Jake felt a churn of anticipation mixed with lingering doubt. The starkness of the new day illuminated his commitment to transform his life. As sunlight streamed through the window, he reflected on the weight of his declaration. He had to act. Action was the only antidote to the paralysis of indecision. He grabbed a notebook and a pen, positions shifting inward as he jotted down the details that took shape in his mind. He needed a structural plan, a road map that would guide him through the uncharted territory he was embarking upon. Business name, target market, potential partnerships. Each scribble made his aspirations feel more tangible, more within reach. Yet, even as he wrote, a knot twisted in his stomach at the thought of confronting his parents again. Would they come around? Would they see the dream in action, or would his passion ignite fear instead? In that moment, he made a decision: he would start small. He would test his ideas, gauge the reactions of those around him, including his parents. Over breakfast, he navigated between minor conversation topics, interspersing them with casual mentions of eco-friendly innovations in the auto industry. He spoke about local success stories he'd unearthed, businesses thriving on sustainable principles. His parents listened intently, buried in their own culinary activities, but Jake could feel their unvoiced skepticism heavy in the air. After breakfast, he set out to meet a friend at the coffee shop where he had first found validation. Amelia, an old classmate, had recently started her own skincare business focusing on natural ingredients. The notion of discussing their entrepreneurial journeys sparked excitement in him. Ideas were contagious, and he needed to absorb as much as possible. The shop buzzed with life, fragrant coffee mingling with delectable pastries. It felt ripe with potential. As he settled into a corner table, he couldn't shake the anxious flutter in his chest. When Amelia arrived, her enthusiasm reminded him of why he sought this path. "Hey, Jake. Tell me more about your business plan," she grinned, taking a seat. Her confidence enveloped him like a warm blanket, nudging him to begin articulating his vision. As he shared his thoughts about the eco-friendly auto shop, her eyes sparkled with interest. "That sounds incredible. You've always had a knack for cars. Have you thought about how to market it?" Her questions sparked a cascade of ideas, and he began to shape a comprehensive strategy in conversation. They brainstormed logos, unique selling propositions, and even social media outreach. For the first time, the fear started to diminish, replaced by the intoxicating promise of possibility. Jake realized that gathering knowledge and connections was equally vital to his ambition. However, as they wrapped up the meeting and he stepped outside, a sudden dread enveloped him. What if his parents' support remained elusive? What if they remained anchored in their unwavering skepticism while Jake soared into the unknown? He needed them to believe in his potential. He needed them to be on his side. As he drove home, the earlier confidence began to erode, replaced instead by lingering insecurities. What if he failed? What if pursuing his passion severed their bond? The conflict of familial loyalty versus personal aspiration gnawed at him, each thought spiraling into fears of rejection and solitude. When he entered the house, the comforting familiarity hit him like a forgotten embrace, but he sensed a shift from earlier that morning. The kitchen was quiet, his parents appeared to be in a serious discussion over the table, bodies rigid, tension radiating off them. The moment he stepped in, they paused, turning toward him as though he were an unexpected punchline. "Jake," his father started, voice low. "We need to talk." Each syllable weighed heavily, suspended in the air like an ominous cloud. Jake braced himself for the confrontation he had sensed since the previous night, knowing at that moment that his journey had merely entered a new phase 1. Laden with potential fallout and crucial conversations ahead. The stakes were rising, and he would have to assert himself like never before. With his heart racing, Jake questioned whether he could navigate this conversation without losing his foothold. Would his vision remain intact, Or would he falter when faced with the wall of doubt built by his parents' fears? He took a breath, knowing the time had finally come to dismantle those walls. The atmosphere in the kitchen was thick with anticipation, the silence punctuating Jake's anxiety. His father motioned for him to sit, and Jake swallowed hard, battling the fear creeping up his spine. He knew they were worried, their protective instincts had always run deep, but in that moment, he needed them to see the change brewing within him. "Jake," his father began again, gaze steady but cautious. "We're just concerned about your plans. You've always had a passion for cars, sure, but starting a business is a whole different ballgame." Jake clenched his fists beneath the table. This was the moment he had been dreading, yet he sensed an unusual surge of resolve. He needed to communicate that this wasn't merely a fleeting interest, it was his future they were discussing. "Dad, I understand that you're concerned. But this isn't just a whim. I've thought long and hard about this. I want to create something that not only fulfills me, but also contributes positively to the world." His mother exchanged a glance with his father and cleared her throat. "But what do you really know about running a business? It's not just about having a dream, Jake. There are risks involved. What if you fail? We just want to protect you from making a mistake." Jake felt a surge of frustration. "What if I never try? What if I end up regretting not pursuing this? Life isn't just about safety, it's about growth." He could feel the heat of his words, hopeful yet piercing. The quiet paused, and he noticed their initial schism start to wobble. He began to recount the meeting he had just had with Amelia, illuminating every detail, the brainstorming, the excitement of creating a brand, and how invigorated he felt knowing that others had also turned passions into realities. Something in him had shifted, and he sensed that sharing it could spark a flicker of understanding, a pathway towards their acceptance. "Amelia has built a successful business from scratch, and she started just like I am now. She's been an incredible source of inspiration. I know I can do this," he said, his voice steadier with conviction. Silence enveloped the kitchen once more as his parents processed what he had said, their expressions turning contemplative. Suddenly, Jake noticed the small, simmering doubt inside him begin to ease. Perhaps this was the very essence of empowerment, acknowledging fear but choosing to act regardless. "Jake," his mother said softly, finally breaking the stillness, "we want to support you. But it's going to take careful planning. Have you thought about how you'll finance this? What if you need help?" He felt a flicker of hope, there was a crack where their skepticism had previously loomed. "Yes, I have a plan you might not have noticed. I'm going to start small, possibly a side project while I keep my current job. This way, I can manage the risk while still probing the potential market." His father nodded slowly, the lines of worry beginning to smooth across his brow. "That makes sense. Just promise us that you'll consider our input along the way. We just want to see you succeed." The acknowledgement felt monumental. Encouragement was seeping into their initial trepidation, and in that moment, it felt like more than acceptance, it was validation of his dreams wrapped in the concern of love. As they discussed strategies to mitigate risks and ensure success, Jake felt a newfound determination blossom. With every idea exchanged, he was reconstructing not just the foundation of his business plan but the bond with his parents as allies in this venture. But just as the conversation turned productive, a nagging doubt wormed its way back into his mind: would his ambition truly resonate in the harsh realities of entrepreneurship? As they drew up lists of tasks and timelines, determination wrestled with an old, familiar fear: what if his gamble cost him too much? With this uncertainty pulsating, Jake's resolve solidified distinctly. He would prove himself. Not just to his parents but to himself. In the following days, he frantically organized notes, researched funding options, and built connections. But the deeper he dove into the business landscape, the more he realized unexplored aspects of himself. He needed to confront doubts that ran deeper than he'd anticipated. It was time to dismantle those hesitations head-on. He had a plan, now he needed courage. Watching success stories unfold around him ignited a fierce desire to not just exist but to thrive. As he lay in bed that night, his mind racing with possibilities and dilemmas, a thought struck him: what hidden skills lay dormant, awaiting discovery as he pursued this ambition? The journey was only beginning, and he would soon have to face not only external obstacles but unexpected truths buried within himself. What Jake didn't realize yet was that the most significant transformations were once again lurking just beyond the horizon. With this realization simmering in his mind, he drifted to sleep, ready to awaken to the challenges of the next day. The morning sun spilled through Jake's bedroom window, illuminating the walls cluttered with automotive posters and scrap paper filled with half-formed ideas. Fueled by purpose, he slid out of bed, determined to make strides toward his vision. The resolve he had felt the night before was undeterred. It was time to harness it into tangible action. As he sipped his coffee, he meticulously reviewed the notes he had made regarding market research and customer appreciation. He understood that a successful venture required more than just passion, it needed strategy and customer insight. Yet with each passing moment, a new layer of nervousness unfurled. What if his ideas weren't good enough? What if he couldn't reach his audience? Shoving the fear aside, Jake committed himself to a day of exploration. He decided to visit a local car convention that Saturday, not only to soak in the atmosphere but to gauge how others marketed their products. With each booth he walked by, his eyes absorbed details: the way vendors pitched their ideas, the slick branding of their materials, and the enthusiastic conversations swirling around him. Here was the heartbeat of his future dream manifesting into reality. By noon, he approached a booth showcasing innovative automotive gadgets. The seller caught his eye, and Jake struck up a conversation, eager to learn from someone immersed in the business he aspired to enter. They exchanged insights, and Jake felt an electric spark of inspiration as ideas filled his mind like a rushing tide. A rush of information overwhelmed him, but within it, he began to identify themes that resonated with customers he hoped to engage. Feeling invigorated yet somewhat fragile in this new world, Jake scribbled down notes, particularly about logistics and operations, two elements he had glossed over in his initial planning. In the thick of this exchange, a whisper of doubt flickered again: could he learn fast enough? Realizing he needed a mentor to guide him through these uncharted waters, Jake took a leap of faith, asking the seller if he would be open to chatting more over coffee. To his delight, the seller agreed, and they exchanged contact information. He felt a surge of gratitude. This was the kind of connection that could bolster his confidence and inch him closer to his dream. Later that evening, bolstered by the knowledge he had gained, Jake sat with his parents again, eager to share his experience. The kitchen felt warmer this time, the atmosphere shifting from apprehension to one of budding excitement. He outlined each lesson learned, bringing them into his vision with vibrant detail. Yet, as he reflected on the vibrant ideas building inside him, an uncomfortable thought took root: without practical experience, was he truly equipped to lead a business? He thought of Amelia's success, her confidence in the marketplace. Did he possess that same level of grit? The conversation soon drifted back to finances, and with every question posed by his parents, Jake could feel the tension rising. They genuinely wanted to support him, yet their hesitation was unmissable. Each inquiry opened old wounds of self-doubt that he had yet to fully address. They were trying to help him safeguard his ambitions, but in their concern, he felt the familiar sting of inadequacy rear its head. That night, as he lay in bed staring at the shadows cast by the faint glow of streetlights, Jake reflected on the day. The voices of self-doubt whispered insidiously, mixing with the thrill of newfound knowledge. He was standing on the brink of becoming what he had always envisioned, yet he couldn't shake the gnawing sensation that there were still gaps in his understanding. What would it take to forge ahead? The courage to tackle both the external market and his internal battles seemed paramount. He needed an actionable strategy, one that encompassed both client perspectives and his self-assurance, and he had to embark on this journey with resilience if he were to transform fear into fuel. As he drifted into sleep, one question loomed: who would he become as he confronted these challenges, and would he rise above the trepidation to solidify his place in the competitive arena of entrepreneurship? The night enveloped him, pregnant with untold possibilities, all hinged on the dawning clarity of his next chapter. Would this be the time he finally started untangling the knots of his apprehension? Jake's first task the following morning was to set up a meeting with the seller from the convention. Nervous energy pulsed through him like a live wire as he pulled out his phone to draft an email. Could he effectively communicate his aspirations without sounding naive? His confidence wavered, but he pressed send, knowing that every moment of hesitation pulled him further from his goal. The day passed slowly, the minutes stretching out like a long highway. He found himself immersed in research, diving deeper into logistics and operations. Each click of the keyboard was accompanied by thoughts about the most challenging parts of launching an entrepreneurial venture. Questions bubbled in his mind: what if I can't manage the business side? How would I handle unexpected obstacles? Jake began to realize that a successful entrepreneur wasn't just a visionary, they were an adept problem solver. For the next few days, he forced himself out of his comfort zone, attending various seminars about business planning and customer engagement. Each session felt like a trial by fire, flushing away the remnants of his previous anxiety with bursts of hard-won knowledge. Yet with every insight gained came the heaviness of knowing how far he still had to go. The concepts of risk management and financial forecasting felt foreign, intimidating even. Jake grappled with the fact that he needed more than enthusiasm, he required a robust plan, a roadmap, so to speak. Amidst his new learning, the seller finally replied to his email, proposing a time to meet. A jolt of excitement rushed through Jake as he read the message. Meeting with someone experienced was the very opportunity he had hoped for. He spent the time before the meeting crafting questions in his mind, ready to absorb all the insights he could. When the day of their coffee meeting came, Jake arrived early, his stomach a mix of anticipation and apprehension. He chose a corner table, the sunlight spilling in, as if it, too, were eager for this exchange. As he waited, he rehearsed his pitch mentally, anxious to convey not just his ideas but his passion for the industry. But when the seller arrived, a pleasant yet seasoned figure, Jake faltered momentarily, doubts creeping in. Would he perceive Jake's ambition as folly? After casual introductions, Jake took a deep breath. They talked extensively, the seller sharing stories of his own setbacks and victories. Each tale was a cue for Jake to explore parallels in his journey. You know, the seller said over a sip of coffee, the strongest entrepreneurs aren't those who succeed without a hitch, they're the ones who embrace their failures and learn from them. The candor resonated with Jake, igniting a spark. He began to see failures not as deterrents but as essential stepping stones. Suddenly, he felt a growing sense of ownership of his aspirations. He started sharing his own ideas and concerns, the words flowing as he detailed the market research he'd conducted and the product concepts that had emerged. To his surprise, the seller regarded him with genuine interest, nodding as he absorbed the thoughts. You have a vision, Jake. But remember, clarity comes not from knowing all the answers, but from understanding the right questions. Jake ruminated on this, the weight of the statement settling in. Questions were paramount, not just answers, a revelation that felt like a door swinging open. As they wrapped the conversation, Jake walked away with deeper clarity and newfound determination. Yet, as he stepped outside into the bustling street, he sensed another layer of anxiety building. While he had garnered invaluable insights, it became starkly apparent that the journey ahead still held challenges he wasn't yet prepared for. Could he confront the uncertainties with the same audacity? But what he didn't know was just how much this meeting would push him toward a decision that could redefine not just his career, but his entire identity. In the echo of the city, Jake realized he must reach down and confront the inner doubts instead of merely skirting around them. The questions were mounting, and one, in particular, gnawed at him: what kind of leader would he be? And as he stood at the precipice, he knew that the next step was crucial not just for his business, but for the man he was becoming. Would he have the courage to face the emerging path, no matter how daunting? Jake awoke to the vibrant rays of the morning sun streaming through his window, illuminating the previously chaotic room that bore witness to countless late-night planning sessions. Today felt different, a palpable shift had settled around him, intertwining excitement with an undeniable sense of clarity. Every thought was now laced with intention, fueling the urgency to elevate his aspirations beyond mere dreams into tangible milestones. He leaned over his desk, rifling through notes from the recent meetings and seminars, solidifying strategies for his eco-friendly auto repair shop. He had meticulously crafted a well-rounded business plan, addressing every aspect from market analysis to a compelling marketing strategy. Jake understood that caution and persistence were paramount. The road ahead was still riddled with uncertainty, but he was resolute in his commitment to growth. Stepping outside, the fresh air invigorated his spirit. He could feel the pulse of the world around him, each beat breathed life into his aspirations. Today, he had scheduled a formal presentation of his business plan to a local small business incubator looking to foster new talent. Jake's heart raced not from fear, but from the comprehension that he was finally taking proactive steps towards shaping his future. As he arrived at the venue, his stomach fluttered with nervous energy. Would his ideas resonate? Would those who had walked this path before see the potential he believed in? He straightened his shoulders, reminding himself of every hurdle he had overcome. Every encounter leaned into this moment, each shaping him into a man ready to embrace possibilities. The room buzzed with aspiring entrepreneurs, all eyes searching for inspiration. When it was his turn to present, Jake felt a rush of adrenaline. Standing in front of a small table adorned with folders filled with opportunity, he allowed his nerves to transform into enthusiasm. He spoke with passion, detailing his vision, elucidating the potential of a business focused on eco-sustainability within the auto industry. The room absorbed his words, he could sense the shift in energy. As he concluded, the audience erupted with applause, his heart swelled with gratitude and realization. He had framed something profound, not just a business plan but a purpose to challenge the status quo with innovation and responsibility. In that applause, he found affirmation, a reflection of his journey from uncertainty to conviction. The panel comprised seasoned entrepreneurs and investors who peppered him with questions, all directed toward understanding his approach. Each query sharpened his resolve, he responded with clarity and insight born from intense preparation. Failure is not my endpoint, he assured them with an unwavering gaze. It's an opportunity, it fosters creativity and resilience. Their nods of encouragement fueled his conviction it was time to embrace not just the risk, but the potential for incredible returns. As the panel wrapped up, one investor leaned forward, intrigued. You show determination, Jake. This isn't just another project for you, it's personal. His words echoed louder than any applause. This investor recognized his essence beyond the numbers and figures, a determination that set him apart. Days passed, and with each passing moment, Jake further solidified his determination to propel his venture forward. He diligently followed up with recommendations and connections made through that initial pitch, fabricating networks that tethered his fragile aspiration into a budding reality. Yet, late into those nights as he reflected alone, the depth of anticipation battled the fears that occasionally resurfaced. What if his ambitions faltered? What if the foundation he built crumbled under expectations? But Jake had learned one vital lesson: he had the power to navigate uncertainties rather than succumb to them. Slowly, he began coaching his mindset into one of resilience. He layered his doubts with optimism, acknowledging that the path would be arduous, but each step layered progress. His parents had begun to embrace his vision, offering not just support but a renewed belief in the man he was becoming. Months later, the day finally arrived for Jake to open the doors to his eco-friendly auto repair shop. Anticipation tinged the air, thick with excitement. The grand opening felt electric, a palpable energy enveloped the space he had nurtured from a distant dream into reality. Families and friends gathered, but it was the community that truly brought life to the event. Jake embraced each interaction, smiling and sharing stories of his journey. He was no longer just a mechanic, he was a business owner poised to make a difference. As a ribbon was cut, he turned to the crowd, heart swelling with gratitude. Today isn't just about opening a business, it's about forging a future where we can all contribute to a sustainable world. The cheers erupted, but beyond the ecstatic shouts, Jake understood truly what he had achieved, a space of fulfillment, a roaring testament to faith in individual potential and courage to seize one's dreams. The road ahead remained uncharted, but Jake stood confidently on the precipice of transformation, a celebrated entrepreneur, not just because he had launched a shop, but for the grit, growth, and willingness to step into the unknown that led him here. He had conquered the fear, he had embraced hope. His story was just beginning, but he was ready, a beacon of determination illuminating the way toward a more sustainable future. Now, it's your turn to fuel your own journey of transformation. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm because it truly makes a difference. Comment your reactions and theories about the ending below. And share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. You need to show your support, and don't wait even one more second to share this life-changing content.